Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ruby for the Web. I'm your host and your professor, Dr. John Baugh. In this lecture, we're going to turn our attention to the model portion of Rails MVC, or Model View Controller, architecture. So far, our Rails apps have used controllers and views to display information. Now we're going to explore where that information comes from and how it's validated. So we'll learn how Rails models represent data stored in a database table, enforce rules or validations to maintain data integrity, interact with each other using relationships or associations, automatically handle common tasks like timestamping and lifecycle callbacks, and secure sensitive data such as passwords. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to create and migrate new models in Rails, use active record to create, read, update, and delete. That's the CRUD. And add validations that ensure only valid data is stored. Use callbacks to modify or check data before saving. Add secure password authentication using has secure password. And write some really cool Ruby on Rails code. All right, so we're going to start with creating models and database tables. So up to this point, we've focused on how Rails has handled just web requests and renders, how it renders dynamic content through controllers and views. So let's focus on the model portion of MVC, and that's the part, again, responsible for representing and managing that data. A model in Rails is a Ruby class. Okay, so it's not anything magical or different. It's a class, and it connects to a table in the database. Each instance of the class represents one row in that table. Rails uses something called the active record framework to create and manage the database tables through what are called migrations. So query and manipulate data using object-oriented Ruby, and also active record framework is used to automatically handle table-to-class mappings by convention. So for example, if you had a model class user, and the table name would be users, and then column IDs or columns would be ID, name, email, created at, updated at. So that would just be an example. So we're going to continue using our REST demo app from the previous projects, like from lecture 6 and 7, which already has Rails and SQLite configured. Otherwise, we would have to do that. So before you, if you've just loaded this, make sure if you have an upper level project that you change directory so that you're in the directory for REST demo app. And then we can test it just to make sure that everything's working by doing ben Rails server. And then we should be able to visit. So that's at localhost 5000. So we'll go there. I'm going to go over here and we'll say localhost 5000, and it will bring up our application. This is kind of where we left off last time. So home, help, about, and then users. Okay. So, and then you could edit any of the users, right? All right. So far, so good. Now I'm going to, I guess I could keep that. Well, you know what? I'm going to kill it and we'll restart it when we need to. So we'll clear that. We're going to generate a new model for user profile. And it's going to have two attributes, the bio, which is text, and then an age of type integer. So bin slash Rails, generate model, and then it's going to be called user profile. Then you put the data inside of it. So bio colon text space age colon integer. Okay. If I hit enter on that, that line right there is going to generate what is called a migration file, okay, which we'll look at those under db migrate. So db migrate, you can see that I now have, in addition to the other ones like books, microposts, users, articles, I have user profiles. So this is the one it just generated, and it has the data like the text and the integer and then the timestamps. That's what's in it so far. And So what actually is a migration? So we've talked about it before. We've used DB migrate before, but we didn't really dive real deep into what it means or what it is. So what is a migration? A migration in Rails is a Ruby file. Okay, that's this thing over here. It's a Ruby file that describes a change to your database structure. Things like creating a table, adding or removing columns, or renaming fields. You can think of it as kind of like version control for your database schema. So this keeps track of changes as you go along. Instead of manually running SQL or SQL commands, you write migrations in Ruby, and Rails translates them into SQL for your database engine. And as we've seen, the migrations are stored in DB migrate. So these are all migrations. Okay. They're timestamped so that Rails knows the order in which to apply them. Rails automatically generates several files. So you've got app models. So app models user profile. So when we generated that, it created the user profile as well, and the DB migrate, and then it's got, you know, some numbers here, and then create user profile, which is what we have here. We've already seen that. And then test, it'll actually create under test models a user profile test. Okay, so this is, we can run it if we want to put some tests in here. Now, to make sure we apply the migration to create the new table in the database, we're going to type bin/rails db:/migrate and hit enter. And the output that you get should be something with kind of a timestamp. Yeah, create user profiles, migrating, and then it'll say it created table user profiles, give you a time here, and then it has an end right there telling you the when it was migrated, how long it took, etc. So that confirms the new table was created. And just as a reminder, the app models user profile, so app up here, app models user profile. This file right here, you can be comfortable with the fact that the active record framework automatically provides accessor methods for bio and age, and class methods for querying. Okay, so like userprofile.all, userprofile.find, etc. You can think of this as a Ruby wrapper around a table row. So we can look also at things like the schema file. So I'm going to close that a little bit. Under DB, you've got this schema file, and you can see all the different tables it has created, and you can see the one we just added with create table user profiles. And it has things like t-text bio, t-integer age, and it automatically adds the date times for created at and update as well. That's basically Rails snapshot of your database. Okay, just to do a little bit of testing here, I'm going to clear that down there. And we're going to have bin/rails. I'm going to open up the console so I can interact with it down here instead of having to write a bunch of additional files or anything. Little warning about fiddle. You can turn that off. I think I provided instructions in one of the previous lectures or documents or something, but it doesn't really matter. It's still kind of a simple warning. Now, what we're going to do is I want to say user profile dot column underscore names. Okay. And then you see it returns ID, bio, age, created at, updated at, right? So we can see that it has created this successfully. It gives us the proper information in the object, etc. Some gotchas for this part is that you do not need to manually create these tables. The migrations handle that automatically. Always run bin rails db migrate after generating or editing a migration. So if we edit the migration, we definitely want to update by saying db migrate. If you change the schema but forget to migrate, you'll get table not found or unknown column errors. File naming matters. So the model file must match the class name. So user_profile.rb has to match the name of the class, which was user profile with camel case, like capital U, capital P. All right, next section in this lecture, we're going to focus on creating and querying records, okay? Now that we've created a model and corresponding table, okay, with database technology, you've got a database, and then you can have one or more tables. Okay, so we kind of have these migrations are related to the tables, like articles, users, microposts, books, user profiles. Those are kind of the nouns representing entities within the database. They each correspond to a table. The table's in the actual database. Within a table, you have columns, which are called fields, usually. And they are basically the information about it, like we see here: ID, bio, age, updated at. So ID, bio, age, those are fields inside of that particular table. Okay, so if it's in this case, it's user profile. So in the user profile table, it has ID, bio, age, etc. Now if you go by rows visually, in the rows, we call those records. Okay, that's where the term record comes from, and that's why they named this active record. So since we've created the model and the corresponding table, we can store and retrieve data using the framework that we talked about before, active record. Active record turns database rows into Ruby objects. It lets you use object-oriented syntax instead of SQL queries, so you don't have to do all that manually or do serializing and all that stuff. Active record takes care of it. So in this section, we're going to learn how to create and save records, retrieve existing ones, and update and delete records. And we're going to see how the entire CRUD cycle, which we've talked about before, create, read, update, delete, create, read, update, delete, CRUD. You got to remember that, right? That's very, very key, not just for Ruby on Rails. That's not a magical Ruby on Rails thing. That's a computer science database thing. So the CRUD cycle is very important: create, read, update, delete. It can be performed through Ruby alone. All right, so we're in the console still. So what are we going to do? Let's create a user profile using the console. Now, again, we could put these in actual Ruby files, run the Ruby files, etc., but we're going to do it from the console. I'm going to say user profile.create, and inside here, I'm passing it the information that I need to create a user profile. So bio is one property or field that we need to work with. So I'm going to say software engineer with 10 years experience, and then comma, and then age, we'll say 41. I hit enter, and Rails immediately saves that record to the database, and it returns the new object. So we can actually see the information from the object right here. It has a timestamp that it added there for created at and update at, but it automatically creates an ID. It puts the bio that we said and the age that we said. You can also do something like this. So you can actually store it in a variable, create the object first, and then save it to the, or rather create it and save it to the migration, right? Or that will be saved to the database. Okay, so before, what we did is we just called the create command. Create will do both creating the object and then saving it. If we want to, we can say something like this: profile equals user profile.new, not create, but .new, but it takes the same kind of parameter. So loves Ruby, also loves Rails, right? Loves Ruby and Rails. And the age is 25. Okay, and it says it created it. So now it's not in the database, though. It's just in memory. But then if we say profile.save, that is a method call. But remember, with Ruby, if you don't have any parameters for the method call, you don't have to put the parentheses. So we could put profile.save with parentheses. But you can see what it did. You can see that it automatically created that, and it's told us that it succeeded with the true down here. Okay, so it's important to note that user profile.create, user profile.new, etc., these are all Ruby methods, and they can be used in code files as well. We're just using them in the console just because it's fairly easy. Okay, we can list all the records. User profile.all. And again, you could use parentheses, but don't have to. Okay, so we could do that. Does the exact same thing. So you put parentheses, it does the exact same thing. So either way, we see that there's two. We see that one has an ID, a bio, age. The next one has an automatically incremented ID 2, bio, and age. Those are the ones we just added. We can find a specific record. So if I say user profile.find, and then I pass it the primary key, the identifier, 1, okay, that should give us the one that's the software engineer with 10 years experience, right? So we got that, and it does. So that's the only thing it returned, right? It did not return the one with the loves Ruby and Rails. What about this? What if I'm looking for user profile? I could say user profile.where, and then put age is 25. And it shows me an array. Okay, that's what these square brackets are. A little subtlety here. This one returns an array, not just single object. And even though there's only one in this, it's returning an array. But it's returning which one? It's returning the one whose age is 25. And if there were more than one, it would return those. User profile.find underscore by. So instead of find, which goes by the ID, you can say find by, and then you pass it, say, for example, bio. I have to be really careful here because it has to match exactly. It has to have the period and everything. Bio is loves Ruby and Rails. Okay. I hit enter, and it returns that object that has that information in it. So what if we want to update that first record? So the first record, remember, says he's 41. Okay. But let's say he has a birthday, so we want to update that. So I'm going to grab the data. I'm going to say profile, this is a variable, equals user profile.find, and look for that first record. Okay. I've got it stored in profile now. Profile.age equals 42. I'm updating it. And now to actually commit it, you say profile.save. Okay. And then it saves it. And now I can, of course, you can also use the shorthand. So I could say, for example, profile.update, let's see, has another birthday. Profile.update, age, colon, and then 43. Now, instead of just setting the age, and then saving, this does it all in one fell swoop. So I can change that age or other data with comma separation, but say profile.update with the age 43. Now, why is it updating the correct profile? Well, profile is referring to the one that I acquired when I called find, if you remember. So, yeah, right here. So where it says profile equals user profile.find1, it's referring to just that record. And and it has to save it with either save, or it automatically saves it with update if we do that. So I could say, let me see here, user profile.all again. And you can see now that first software engineer is 43 now, was 41. Okay. It does age you quickly, so I have to warn you. Rails will return a deleted object also if we wanted to grab it. If the destroyed is equal to true, you can destroy this particular record if I say profile.destroy. Okay, I say that, and then if I say user profile.all, you'll notice there's only one element in it now because that's where that started, right? So where is it? It's just this one that is the one that loves Ruby on Rails and is 25. We deleted the old guy, right? Don't be offended, I'm 42. So as a summary of some of the common active record methods, new, we've seen, create, we saw, save, find by, where, update, and destroy. So new creates a new object but doesn't save it. Create creates and saves it immediately. Save saves changes to the database. So if I create a new one and then later say .save, I can save it then. Find looks up by the primary key, like the ID. That's the unique identifier for that particular entity. Find by will look up by any attributes you want to use. Where retrieves a filter set, returns an array-like relation. Update updates one or more attributes, and destroy deletes the record from the database. As some gotchas for this section, if you call find with an invalid ID, Rails throws an exception. Use find by if you prefer nil as a return instead of an exception thrown. You just want nil. Use save with an exclamation point or create with an exclamation point to raise errors when validations fail. We'll use those later. The user profile model automatically gains timestamp columns created at and updated at, so don't try to fill those in manually. All right, so next, this section of the lecture, we're going to be discussing adding validations. So by default, Rails will let you save anything to a model, even blank or malformed data. That's fine for experimentation, but in any real application, we have to protect the data integrity. And that's where validation comes in. In our context, a validation is a rule that Rails checks before a record is saved. Okay? So, or updated. Okay? If any of the rules fail, the operation is stopped and the object is marked invalid. In other words, the method valid with a question mark at the end. So valid question mark. Remember, that's nothing really magical. It's just, it's conventionally, a lot of times Boolean returning methods have a question mark in them. So the method valid with a question mark returns false if it's marked invalid. So this ensures that the database never contains incomplete or inconsistent information. Validations live directly inside the model class, and you can use the expressive active record macros. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to hopefully get, let's see, paint maybe. Maybe paint will let me do it. I don't know. Oh, that's crappy. I don't like that. I'm going to take a screenshot of my notes real quick. One moment. These are my notes. Okay. There you go. Not too bad. So you've got presence, which is one of the macros. That field can't be blank, means the field can't be blank, so validates name, presence, true. Length, we can restrict the size of the strings, okay, such as validates bio and length, maximum of 200. Format must match a specific regular expression pattern. Okay, so and then width, you would put whatever regular expression you want. That's a whole other language that you can learn, but that's typically the same across languages. If you're taking a discrete structures course, you probably do cover regex, but it's not quite the same thing. Formal language regular expressions and the ones used in programming languages are not identical. There are some similarities, but not exactly the same thing. Okay. So uniqueness has to be unique across tables. You can set the uniqueness. And numericality is it must be a number. Optionally, you can set it greater than 0. You can set data types, whatever. So there's a bunch of different stuff that you can do. Validations run automatically whenever you call, save, create, or update. If a record fails validation, Rails won't write it to the database. So you can inspect validation results using things like object.valid with a question mark. That would be the method that returns true or false. And things like object, you can access object.errors.full_messages. So object.errors.full_messages. That's like it would show human readable errors that you've set. So let's do some code. So we're going to open up the model, app models, and user profile. I'll close those for a moment. App models, and then user profile. Make sure you're in user profile, not just user. And I'm going to put some example validations in here. I'm just going to copy paste them from my notes. So you don't have to just sit and watch me type. It's like watching paint dry sometimes, I know. So validates bio, presence true. So it needs a bio. We've also said it needs the age. Length maximum of 250. Numericality, only integer set to true. Greater than 0 and less than or equal to 120. So you're providing a range and also a data type. You're saying it can't be a floating point value, right? All right. So we're going to test this over in the console here. So I'm in the console. I'm going to say here, let's just kind of reset this just so it's a little bit clearer. Okay, so we're going to say bin/Rails console. Sometimes the console can be finicky if you're in it too long and messing around with it. Sometimes I found, at least on Windows, but I might have a squirrely environment set up compared to what you have going. So P1 equals user profile dot new age of 30. Now, the issue is I'm giving it an age, but I'm not giving it a bio. The bio says that the validation on the biography has to be present. Okay, it says it has to be present. So it'll say that I created that, but then if I say p1.valid, question mark, it'll say false, right? Okay, well, why is it invalid? So let's do errors.full underscore messages, okay? And I can see bio can't be blank, all right? Now, what about if I set it to an invalid age? What about p2 equals, now you'll notice if I do user profile dot all, it's still just got that first one, loves Ruby on Rails, right? Or Ruby and Rails in that case. So it did not add the invalid thing that I was creating, okay? We're not adding invalid stuff. We're just creating them in memory and seeing what we can do with it. So p2 equals user profile dot new. The bio is hi there, and then the age is, we'll say, -3. Okay. Oops, what happened here? User profile new, age is, oh, age colon, sorry, age colon -3. There we go. And then if I say p2.valid, question mark, it'll say false. Why is it false? Well, it has a bio this time, but if I say errors.full messages, it'll say age must be greater than 0. So based on the validations, the restrictions that you put on here, it will automatically know what you were trying to say. So if I say only integer greater than 0 less than 120, I went to a value less than 0, so it tells me age, so it tells me that variable essentially has to be bigger than 0. It automatically does that. I don't have to type it out. It's automatically there. Now, what happens if I say p3 equals user profile dot new, bio is Rails developer and hobbyist photographer, okay, comma, age is 40, hit enter, p3.valid, question mark, okay, says it's true, because we added a bio and an age. Now I can say p3.save, and it will have saved it to the database. So user profile.all now has 2 elements in it. One has ID 2, that's the earlier one, and then the one we just added now has ID 3, as you can see. Okay, we can see some more validation in action when saving. So p4, user profile.new, okay, bio, let's give it an empty string, comma, age of 0. Okay, if I say p4.save, even though that's invalid, it'll say false. It's not going to let us. p4.persisted, okay, is it in the database? No, it's not. What about p4.save? If I put an exclamation point instead of using the standard regular save, if you want Rails to raise an error instead of returning a Boolean, you can try it with the exclamation point. But this time, it's going to actually throw an exception. If this were in code, you would want to do something like, you know, you're going to try to do exception handling instead of just seeing it printed to the console. So save with no exclamation point, like we did a second ago, and save with an exclamation point are 2 distinct methods in Rails active record persistence module. Okay, so it's called active record : persistence is the name of the module. There's other things that we could do. So if we go into models user this time, I'm going to update this a little bit. So we're going to actually add some things to this. So it has many microposts and dependent destroy. So destroy the dependents. I am pasting in some fun stuff in here. Now, what is this fun stuff of which I speak? So this is uniqueness validation, preventing duplicates in the Ruby code. We'll strengthen. We can strengthen that later if we want to, but right now what we're going to do is we have just the valid email regex. So this is, I know it looks very, very complicated. This isn't really a course on regular expressions. There are regular expression generators if you know what you're asking for. But in this case, it's basically just making sure it's a valid email. So it's saying it has to have, you know, for example, start with a word. It could have a dot in it, @ symbol, lowercase, uppercase, dot, and then another dot at the end, and it has to be some sort of other thing like com or gov or something like that, usually. Okay. So some gotchas about this section are validation order matters. So Rails stops checking a field once even one rule fails for that field. Uniqueness isn't enough by itself. We add a database index for true enforcement. And then save versus save with an exclamation point. So there are two distinct methods. Save returns false if invalid. Save with an exclamation point raises an exception instead of returning false. It just raises an exception if it's invalid. Don't validate derived or read-only attributes. They're not persisted. And console testing tip, you can reset errors anytime with object.errors.clear. So you take the object, you say .errors.clear. Some takeaways from this are that validations form your first line of defense against bad data. They're easy to express, automatically enforced, and make your application safer and more predictable. Okay. Next, we're going to look at some database level support for uniqueness, and then explore some model associations later. So database indices or indexes and uniqueness. This is our next part, our next section. And for this one, in the previous section, rather, we saw how to enforce uniqueness at the model level using the validates. Okay, remember we had the validates right here, right? So email uniqueness true in things like our user, right? Presence true, uniqueness, case sensitivity is false, things like that. So it's good for catching duplicates before Rails writes to the database, but it's not bulletproof. So two users saving at nearly the same moment could still slip through before either record commits. So to make uniqueness rock solid, you add a database index with a unique constraint. So a database index is a data structure, usually a balanced B tree for those data structure enthusiasts out there, that speeds up lookups and can enforce rules like no two records may have the same email. So model validation catches duplicates in Ruby, and database index enforces uniqueness at the database level. Okay, both together can give you correctness and performance. So we're going to do some generation down here, or rather generate the migration. So we're going to assume that our user model includes the uniqueness case sensitivity is false, and that the email is also set. We want to create a migration that adds a unique index on the email as well. Okay, so to do that, we're going to say bin/Rails generate migration, and then I'm going to call it add. Oh, you know what? I think I need to be out of the console here. So I'm going to do exit, clear it, and then we're going to go up here. Okay, so bin/Rails generate migration, add index to user's email. Okay, I hit enter, and it's going to create a migration. And under the DB migrate, right? So under DB migrate, right down here, we now have this add index to user email. Now, what are we going to do with this? We have an empty change method at this point. So inside change, we're actually going to put this guy in there. Okay, so add index, users, email, unique, all true. And then we've saved the file. Okay, we're going to run the migration. Let's see if that works. DB, or rather bin Rails, DB:migrate. Rails should execute the migration and output something like this. Okay, so it'll say migrating, add index, gives you how much time, and then migrate it at the bottom. So that confirms that your database now enforces uniqueness for the email. So we're going to go back into the console, bin/Rails console. We're going to create a user. Okay, so user, not user profile, but user.create, exclamation point. I'm going to put name is Alice, comma, and then email is alice@example.com. Okay. If I try to create another user, okay, so I've got user, we'll say user.all. I can see all of the different users. One of them, Sam Jenkins at the bottom, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, yeah, I've noticed that happens a lot. Is this will get wonky if I have multiple lines within the and have to keep hitting enter within the listing of all. So I got to go back in. Sorry about that. bin/Rails console. This is a little bit finicky. Oh, I have to change to the rest directory first. bin/Rails console. All right, there we go. Give it a second. I said there we go too soon. Okay, so we're going to say, try it again, user.create. And this time, I'm going to put a different name, like Alicia, okay, but with an email of alice@example.com, okay? And this should say validation failed, email has already been taken, and it does. Okay, so the second attempt raises a database error, which is exactly what you want. Your application level validation will usually catch this before it gets here, but the index is your last line of defense. So some gotchas for this are you edit the migrations in your editor, not the console. So they're Ruby files in DB migrate. Timestamps do matter. Migration file names begin with a timestamp. Rails runs them in order. Okay, so if you rename those, you're going to have a problem. Never manually reorder or rename them. Okay. One migration equals one schema change. So avoid bundling unrelated edits into a single migration. Rollback option, if you make a mistake, you can always say bin/Rails space DB : rollback, ROLLBACK. So bin/Rails space DB : rollback. That'll go to the whatever last migration you made, it'll go to before you made it. Uniqueness validation is not the same thing as database index. So the validation helps the user see friendly error messages, but the index actually prevents bad data from being inserted. Okay, so takeaway, adding a unique index complements your Rails validation by ensuring performance, so the indexed lookups are faster, but it also adds more integrity. So the database enforces uniqueness even under race conditions. From this point forward, any attempt to insert a duplicate email will fail, either through model validation or via the database constraint. So together, they make your application both user-friendly and bulletproof. All right, so model associations, that's our next section. We're going to discuss model associations. So far, our models, like user and user profile, have been isolated. In a real-world application, just like the databases, the models are connected. So users write posts, authors publish books, customers place orders, etc. Rails makes these relationships simple and expressive through something called active record associations. Active record associations. So what do these associations do? They let one model automatically link to another without manual SQL. Once defined, you can access related data with natural Ruby syntax like user.microposts, micropost.user, etc. So there are several common association types. Okay, so I'm going to actually do another little screenshot fun here. Give me just a minute. I'll take a screenshot from my notes on my other window. And there we go. I'm going to copy that guy. There we go. So the association like belongs to micropost to user. Each micropost is owned by one user. Has many, so user can have many microposts. User, can have many microposts. Has one, user has exactly one profile related record. Has many, through. So doctor appointments, patients. So indirect relationship through a join model. Okay, so doctor is related to patients, but not directly. They don't have references to one another. They have kind of like a join table, if you're familiar with database terminology. So the appointments is how they are related. All right. Cool, cool. So in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to connect the user and the micropost to show how associations create linked data models. So we'll confirm the existing micropost model. So we created micropost in lecture 6 using scaffold, which already added the model, controller, views, routes, user references column. So no generation should be needed. So to verify this, we're going to go under app models. We got models here. I'm going to close these for a second. And we're going to go under micropost and also user. So I'm going to open up user. I'm going to open up micropost, and we're just going to check this here. Let's also open up the db migrate create microposts. Let me see here. db migrate and then create microposts. So there we go. Right. So we can see and make sure that these things have what are needed. Okay. So T references, user, null, false, etc. So we're going to check some things in the console down here. So micropost dot column underscore names. And we do see ID content user ID created at update. Okay. We're going to verify the migration. So we're going to open up this create microposts here and make sure that everything matches. Well, we're just making sure everything looks good. Okay. If you don't have this or don't see it, then you have to generate it. We get the foreign key true, null, false, T references user, T string content, T timestamps. It's all in this right here, create table microposts, and that's inside of def change. All right, so you might see a different number depending on when you're watching this or what version you have, but this has 8.0. I'm going to run the migration, just make sure everything's good. So bin rails db migrate. Oops, I did it again. I need to, just like Britney Spears said. Oops, I did it again. bin/rails db migrate, really old reference. Okay. So bin/rails db migrate. If you skipped lecture 6, then you probably need to run bin/rails and then do generate scaffold micropost content : string user : references. Okay, so bin/rails generate scaffold micropost space content : string user : references, and then do a bin rails db migrate again. So we're going to define some associations in the models. Okay, so inside of the user right here, we have microposts and then dependent destroy. Okay, so make sure that you see that in yours. If not, you need to fix it. And then in micropost, what do we have? So currently this is just belongs to user. That doesn't really help us. So we're going to do validates. Okay, validates content, and then presence is true. And then length, we have to put this inside of and sorry about that, my cat started climbing on me. So maximum 280, and then validates user ID presence is true. Okay, so we're saying that the user ID has to be present as well. So belongs to, okay, adds methods like micropost.user, and then has many microposts. So a user has many microposts. If you don't have that, you need to put that automatically, or put that before you go on. What that means is it adds methods like user.microposts and user.microposts.create. Dependent destroy. If we added something like that, it deletes a user's post automatically if the user is destroyed. So, for example, this right here, dependent destroy. It says if the user is deleted, it prevents orphan records, basically. So we can experiment in the console. So I'm going to try to find our friend Alice. She's been busy all day working for your network class with Bob and Eve. So email is alice@example.com. All right. I'm going to do that. It did, I think it found something. I guess we're going to see. Yeah, there we go. So I just used u as the variable to hold the reference to the record that it got back, and it does have Alice. It's not showing the email because it's filtered, but we can create microposts that belong to that user. So u.microposts.create exclamation point content is hello world. Okay, and then it creates that, and then u.microposts. Microposts.create exclamation point content is Rails associations are easy, right? And what if we want to look at all the posts for that user? Just this user, u. So u.microposts.pluck, and then put colon content, hit enter, and you can see that array at the bottom has hello world in it. And, I spelled Rails wrong. Oops. But Rails associations are easy. Okay. What if you want to know, or grab the micropost? So I could say micropost.first. Okay. Micropost.first, and then say m.user.name. It'll tell me, we actually had William Bob post something from when we were doing examples from before. So Billy Bob or William Bob is who posted that. If you're just doing this from scratch, then it probably was Alice. Okay, so step 5 in this is we're going to preview how the associations affect routing and views. So you don't need to implement this code yet, but as a preview of how your associations would be made, I'm going to see if I can bring this up in here. So it's kind of small, but user.microposts.each, and then do on each post, you can say post.content with this syntax right here. Okay. So you could also create new posts tied to the current user. So like whatever the name, current user.microposts, like u.microposts, like we just had, .build, and then you say content of the new post. Some gotchas in this section are always include the foreign key true in the migration, so the database enforces referential integrity, meaning you want to make sure that if one thing is a foreign key, that means that it's a primary key, typically in another table, okay? So a micropost is referred to by a user, right? So belongs to implies user ID must exist. So Rails will raise errors if you try to save a micropost without an associated user. You want to be careful with circular deletes. So be cautious with the dependent destroy. Deleting a user can trigger many cascading deletions, so you got to be really careful. Something called n+1 queries. So when you start listing associated data in loops, consider eager loading. So you would want to do like dot includes microposts later on, but just keep that in mind. So takeaway is that model associations are how Rails expresses real-world relationships between entities. They let you navigate between objects naturally. You can just do things like user.microposts and micropost.user, so you can see who the owner is. So these connections are central to nearly every Rails application. They make your models more powerful, expressive, and tightly integrated with active records querying features, and you don't have to write all that custom stuff yourself. Okay? All right. So next thing are callbacks. So what's a callback? A callback lets you run specific bits of Ruby code automatically at key points in an object's lifecycle. For example, before a record is saved, after it's created, or right before it's destroyed. They're useful for tasks such as normalizing or cleaning data, such as downcasing emails, like if someone does all caps or puts a bunch of weird caps or whatever, or mistypes something but makes one letter capital, you can downcase it and make it all lowercase. Logging or auditing changes is another useful task for callbacks, automatically setting default values, triggering dependent updates in related models. In short, validations check if data is good, and callbacks modify or respond to that data at precise moments. Okay, so for this, we're going to take another little snapshot here. Some common lifecycle hooks or that are used with the callbacks. Okay, so for this one, we're going to put it over here. These are very, very common. So before validation, right before the validations are checked, after validation, before save, before create, after create, before update, after update, before destroy, and after destroy. There are others, but those are the most, probably the most common to be used. Okay, so keep that in mind. And you can always, of course, pause the video, take screenshots, do whatever you need to do to get all this information for yourself. Okay, so again, there you go, right? Take a selfie. Okay, there you go. Now, so if we open app models user, which we have here, we might want to, for example, say before save, we want a downcase email. So it tells Rails to run the method downcase email, which we haven't defined yet, but we're going to. So this before save, we did not make that up. Okay. We are making up downcase email because that's going to be a function that we create, method that we create. So down here, I'm going to create a private section, and then you're going to do define downcase email. So this has to match what you're calling, and I'm going to give it an end here. And then inside here, I say self.email equals email.downcase. So this downcase is actually built in. Okay, so you can see, since we called it email.downcase, or we called this downcase email rather, the name of our method, we are telling it before save. That's a legitimate legitimate lifecycle hook. Okay, so it's basically when that event occurs before the save, it calls this email. Okay, so it's called a callback because it basically you call it and say, hey, call me back when you're ready. And it's saying, well, before save, that's when you're going to call it back. So you're going to call downcase email at that time. Okay, so it's hooked in. And again, before save downcase email tells Rails to run that method before saving. The method updates the email attribute in place, ensuring the value in the database is always lowercase. Okay, so just to make sure everything's working well, I'm going to just be cautious and exit here, and then bin/Rails console again, just to make sure everything's loaded properly. We're going to create a user with mixed case email and then see what happens. So u equals user.create, ! Name is Alan. And then email is alan.turing@example.com. Com's all capitalized like that, right? Oops, I think I goofed somewhere. Let me see. Where did it goof? Is it the dot? Let me look. Oh yeah, I goofed. Okay, so it doesn't need two colons. The colons actually associate with this, not the actual callback or hook. So, all right, let's try this again. Try it again. There we go. Worked. Now, what happens if I try to print the information out? So what if I say u.email? You see how it's all lowercase now? Even though I typed it with some uppercase letters and even totally capitalized com at the end, it is downcasing it. Okay, so it's actually doing that properly. What if I say u.update and then put email is new address at gmail.com. Okay, so all caps just to see what happens, and then say u.email. Well, now it's new address at gmail.com, but you'll see that it is all downcased. Okay, now let's put it back just to keep this proper here. alan.turing@example.com. Just get it right. Doesn't matter if you're doing it uppercase, but okay, alan.turing@example.com. So the callback continues to normalize automatically. Let's use another example here. So inside user again, let's log a message to the console every time a user is deleted. So this is should be a pretty safe example. famous last words probably, but we'll say before destroy. That's a lifecycle hook. Log deletion. Okay. And if we go down here, we've got downcase email, def log deletion with an end. We're going to log. So we're going to say rails.logger.info. And again, this is a method call. Remember, we don't need, if it's only one parameter or zero parameters, you don't, well, actually, you don't need the parentheses regardless. But we're going to say use interpolation here, name and then email, like that. Okay, so let's make sure. Oh, sorry, that should be inside parentheses there. But that's just for stylistic stuff. That's not for, that should be inside the curly brace or the double quotes. Sorry about that. So these are not, this is not programming syntax. This is inside the string. It just shows like the name and then in parentheses, the email is going to be printed. Okay, so when you call u.destroy, we save that file, right? Just make sure when you call u.destroy, Rails prints a message to the development log and your terminal if the server is running in the foreground. So that's because the log deletion is written as a callback hook, okay? So it's for the before destroy event. So just for practice, even though u already refers to this guy, we're going to say user.findBy. Email alan.turing@example.com. Hit enter there and make sure u is there. So we verify, just type u and see what happens. And we get it. So Alan. And we'll say u.destroy. I did u.destroy. And we can verify that the email no longer exists. So user.findBy email of alan.turing@example.com. Okay, there you go. Perfect. So, okay, some notes. The private keyword marks all methods defined below it as private instances. Okay, that's what we did here. Instance methods, rather, within the class. So that means those methods can only be called from within the same object and not from outside the code. Okay, so anything private is called by the code inside here. Some gotchas in this section are callbacks can stack up quickly. Too many callbacks making debugging difficult. That would, or make debugging difficult. Keep them simple and clearly named. Avoid business logic in callbacks, so they should prepare and clean up data, not enforce major program flow. Be careful with exceptions. If a callback raises an error, it cancels the entire save destroy operation. So don't rely on instance variables from controllers. Callbacks run inside models, not controllers, so stick to model attributes. Use before commit or background jobs if you need to trigger outside side effects like sending an email safely after a transaction finishes. Okay. So some takeaways. Callbacks are an automation, or are the, I guess, automation glue in your Rails models. They help maintain consistent data and trigger predictable side effects at key lifecycle points without duplicating code elsewhere. We want to use them to normalize or sanitize data before saving, logging, or cleaning up after destroying records, but not as a substitute for validations or controller logic. So next up, we're going to apply a different kind of model logic, adding secure password handling. Okay, so let's look at that. As an overview of this, I'm going to close some of this up so we can kind of start a little bit fresh here. There's models, there's DB. Okay. So modern web apps must never store passwords in plain text. Instead, we store an encrypted or hashed version that cannot be reversed to reveal the original password. Rails provides built-in support for this using the has secure password macro, which relies on something called bcrypt. It's a very popular hashing algorithm. So bcrypt. When added to a model, has secure password automatically provides a secure password digest field for storing the hashed password, two virtual attributes, password and password confirmation, It's used for assignment and verification, respectively, and built-in validations to ensure that the password presence and confirmation match. An authenticate method that checks a plain text password against the stored digest. So this feature makes authentication far simpler and safer. No need to manually hash or compare passwords yourself. Okay, so a couple things we need to make sure that we do, though. I'm going to exit the console for now. I want to make sure that I open, we have to actually add bcrypt. So I'm going to open the gem file. We haven't been here for a while. You probably will see it in here. It's probably commented out because that's kind of a default thing. Let me see if they've got it. Oh, it is. Okay, there we go. So you can uncomment it. I would get rid of the version number there and just have it say gem bcrypt. And anytime you do that, you want to install it. So bundle install. So we'll see what happens if we do that. And it'll fetch the data. Give it a minute and I'll come back. Okay, only took like a few seconds. Didn't really take as long as I expected. So we're going to add a password digest column. Now the digest column is where Rails stores the encrypted password. So I'm going to say bin/Rails generate a migration add _password _digest. One second. I got to make sure my notes look okay. Okay, yeah, that looks right. Okay, so add password digest to users. Okay, so that is going to have underscores in it. Add password digest to users, and then a space, and then we're going to call it password digest. So just password _digest of type string. Okay, and then you're going to hit enter. All right, and that's going to generate a migration. Okay, so we give it a second, and then go into DB. Oh, did I spell migration? I did. I spelled migration wrong. I put migrate. Okay, so DB generate migration. Okay, and that should generate in DB migrate an add password digest to users. So if I go into DB migrate, add password digest to users, which is this right here. And in here you see add column, users, password digest, and then string, right? So, all right, now we have to actually perform the migration, right? So bin/Rails DB migrate. That's where I got migrate from. I didn't type it right earlier. Give it a second. Good. And now we want to go into the user model up here, app, and then let me see here, app. Where is it? Models, users, user rather, .rb. And under this before destroy fun stuff, I'm going to put has secure password. So you're basically just putting a declaration there. And then underneath these email validations, I'm going to add another validation. So I'm going to go over here, validates, :password, length, minimum 6, okay, comma, allow nil is set to true, okay. And so has secure password, enables password hashing and authentication. The password and password confirmation attributes exist virtually, not as database columns. The password digest column holds the encrypted string generated by bcrypt. All right. And let's check this out here. So I'm going to say bin/Rails console. And I'm going to try to create a user here. See what happens. So u equals user.new. Name is, we'll say Grace Hopper. And then comma, we can go to the next line. Email is grace.hopper@example.com, comma, and then password is secret123, comma, then password confirmation is secret123, close the parenthesis, and then allow us to say u.save. Okay. And then I can say u.password digest. Okay, it's automatically created for us. So it's got this big old thing here. That's our bcrypt hash right there. And if we try to authenticate it with the right password, so u.authenticate, not authenticate password, u.authenticate, secret123, it will give us the information. So it should return the user object. If you say u.authenticate, you pass it the wrong password, so I'll just put wrong, it'll say false. It won't return the user object. Okay. So you can also validate behavior on update. So if we update a user without changing the password, Rails won't override the existing digest. So if I say u.update, we're going to set the name toghopper instead of gracehopper. And I could still do u.authenticate, secret123. And it still works. Okay, but it gives meghopper now, of course, because the object's been updated. If you change the password, though, u.update, password is new pass, and then do password confirmation is new pass. If I do u.authenticate, it works with the new password, right? Which it should. Some gotchas are that the has secure password requires a password digest column. Without it, the Rails will raise an error where when the model loads. bcrypt has to be installed. So you have to also, after adding that gem to the gem file, you have to run bundle install, okay, from the main prompt, not the console. Password confirmation is optional in code, but helpful in forms. If provided, it must match. So never store plain text passwords anywhere, not in logs, seeds, or fixtures. Authenticate returns false, not nil, when authentication fails. So model test, you could verify password validity using an assert, like user.authenticate password. Takeaways. Has secure password, gives your model professional grade password security with almost no code. It handles hashing, salting, verifying automatically using bcrypt. So from now on, the user, your user model supports, when you do user.create, you have to pass name, email, password, and then password confirmation. Rails ensures that the password's never stored directly. Authentication uses a secure hash comparison. All password-related logic stays inside the model layer. And next we're going to finish with some a little mini exercise. So add some validations to the book model. That's kind of our other model that's just been hitching a ride all this time, right? So this exercise is going to tie together the skills from the earlier sections. You're going to add validations to the existing scaffold model, the book, and confirm the results interactively in the Rails console. So the goals are to strengthen your understanding of active record validations, reinforce the use of valid, errors.fullMessage, and the save, method, demonstrate how to guard against bad or duplicate data, and you should have already obviously had the scaffolded book resource from Lecture 6's mini exercise. So we've got book there. All right, so open the models book.rb, and I'm going to put in these here. I'm going to copy this and paste it, and we can see that it looks like we need to kind of make all these tabbed in a little bit, make it look a little bit prettier. So you can see it validates the title, presence true. So it's required all of these, title, author, genre, because presence true. Uniqueness, the author doesn't have to be unique, neither does the genre, of course, but the title, we're making sure that's unique. The length, maximum 100, maximum 60 for this one. Explanation, again, presence true, prevents empty fields. Uniqueness, true, keeps duplicate titles out of the database, and length limits how long the text fields can be. Okay, we're already in the console. I'm actually going to exit it and do it again just to, again, be a little bit safe here. We'll clear and then bin/rails console so it doesn't get confused. So we're going to see what happens. In here, if I say b1 equals book.new, and I just don't say anything, okay, everything's, nil. So if I say valid, it says false. Okay, b1.errors full messages. Let me see here. b1.errors dot full messages. Okay. And it's listing all of them. So it's basically saying title can't be blank, author can't be blank, genre can't be blank. So let's make a valid book now. What happens if we do a valid one? So book.create, ! Title is The Ruby Way. Author is Hal Fulton. Genre is programming. And it'll be saved automatically because we're not using new, we're using create. So let's see if it's successful. It does seem like it's successful. So we do book.all, it'll list the books, right? We see The Ruby Way by Hal Fulton. What about duplicate title? So D3 equals book.new. Title is The Ruby Way. And then the author is just someone else. Genre is a reference book. Okay. This one, if I say b3.valid, b3, oh, I said D3, didn't I? Well, that's okay. D3.valid, okay, it'll say false, right? D3.errors.full_messages. Title has already been taken. Okay, cool. So, reminder of the lovely stuff that we did with GitHub. So I'm going to do a git add now. This is outside of Ruby, so I got to actually exit this. So I've got to do it inside of the environment here in git bash. I'm going to say git add dot. It'll say there's a working copy, blah, blah, blah. You can do git status to see all the files that have been added or modified. I'm going to git commit. Say, oops, that should be a -m. Add validations for models. Okay. And we're pretty good, I think, right? So some gotchas for this. And as reminders for the entire little project we worked on is that we want to run db migrate first if your books table doesn't exist or has changed. Case sensitivity. So uniqueness is case sensitive by default. You add case sensitive to false if needed. Testing with the save ! Using the bang method, like save ! Or create ! So save bang, create bang, raises an exception if validations fail. Okay, instead of returning, false or nil or something. This is very handy for debugging. And remember that validations live in the model, not the controller. Validations live in the model, not the controller. Controllers should only react to valid question mark and save results and things. All right, some takeaways. So this small activity hopefully illustrated the power of the Rails models. And validations protect your data layer automatically, keeping database records clean and consistent without extra controller logic. And by the end of this exercise, hopefully you have become more confident in how to declare validations inside the model, how to test the validations interactively, and how model level rules enforce data integrity across the app. All right, so that's what I have for you for this lecture. That was maybe a whole lot of information to absorb, so you might have to go through it or slow it down and go back. That's totally fine. And obviously, let me know if you're one of my students, let me know. And if you have any trouble or need any clarification or anything, and I'll try to help. And thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.